Welcome, everyone, to the PCN podcast. I am Dorsey Fricall, and I'm your host tonight. We're going to be joined by a little Brazilian who, once he finishes up his shower, he will be joining us and hosting as well. We've also got Rio, Last King, Vanquish TM, and Will. So we're going to go ahead and start it off, talk about some Super League. Just finished up last night. In the end, River Plate did just enough to hold on from a hard-charging Manchester United and Manchester City. You know, they had such an amazing first half of the season. I think they had about one draw in the first 21 games. Then they went through a stretch in the second half where they lost 7 out of 11 games and, you know, really let people come back in. But they did finish in first in the end, 87 points. They won their last 4. 93 goals for, 31 against. You can't really argue too much against them. The door was open there for United and City, just didn't quite happen. But it'll be interesting to see Season 10. I think there's going to be a lot of changes. And are you guys surprised that River Plate held on in the end? Or, you know, you kind of thought with that first half that it was just kind of inevitable?
Speaking of somebody that was on the River Plate, if you could see what the chats was like after games on non-game days, like just from within, it felt like a choke because towards the end, nobody wanted to play with each other. It was just bad all around. Like at the start, it was like if we went down, people would get mad, but towards the end of the season, it was like people hated each other at kickoff. So it was a real struggle to finish off the season.
Yeah, that's kind of how Season 7 for Milan at the end was for us. It was a chore to show up, and we were in second, chasing first. So it was a little bit different situation, but it didn't help us, obviously. And, you know, credit for them for finishing it out. You know, they lost in both cup finals. We'll get to that in a little bit. But in the end, some players got their first titles who perhaps deserved them by this point.
I was going to say, Rio, so is it, like, true, like, with River Plate, like, once you guys are down, you guys can't, like, recompose, somehow come back? Or do you guys just, like...
That is a very... Like, I don't know if it's, like, players like not being able to handle a comeback, or if it's just as a team they just give up. But if you can look, there's no way to look unless you watch streams, but any game that we was down, we lost. We never came back from being down in a game.
What was it like? Well, like someone particularly bring someone down, or what was it, negativity or something?
It was just a bunch of negativity all the way around. Like conceding goals, the finger started getting wagged and pointed at everybody.
That never works. You know, I've been on teams where that happens, and whether it's true or not, whether one player or one part of the team was responsible for a loss, it just does no one any good. You know, the time of just kind of going over it. You know, in the end, if the manager wants to send out a message saying that things to work on and, you know, be positive about it, that's one thing. But you can't just rip each other or rip your friend or whatever. It's just not a way. And, you know, sometimes talent will just win out. But it's a hard thing to sustain success while you're having that kind of atmosphere.
It's definitely like you said it, Dorsey, we lost 7 out of 11 at the end of it. And during that stretch, it was just a case of defense was blaming offense was blaming defense, and it was just nobody was on the same page. Like, people was more waiting for the season to be over than trying to win anything. So,
yeah.
Thankfully, the Manchesters helped us out by not winning games. So, thank you guys.
Yep, and let's go ahead and move on and talk about those two teams. So, United ended up finishing second. Really interesting season for them. Only 3 losses all season. The next closest was with 6, but they had 11 draws, which was the most in the Super League. You know, pretty good offense, pretty good defense, but especially early on in the season, just too many games where they couldn't get the goal that they needed to win, and they never were that close to River Plate because they did finish. I think second half of the season they maybe had the best form in the league overall. But it was just kind of so many draws early on is what ended up holding them back. And I know there was some chemistry issues with them as well. You know, Magic was fighting with Bigot, and they were fighting with Atlanta, and it just seemed like there was just so much drama over there that, you know, it maybe helped them a little bit because they did play better with it, seemingly, but just too many draws in the end. You got to turn those into wins if you want to win a title.
As a United fan in real life, PCN United this year was kind of like Manchester United in real life last season. They didn't really lose anything, but they couldn't put the nail in the coffin to turn draws into wins. And that's what bit them this season.
Yeah, they played like the 2006, 2017. Yeah, I believe. I'm looking at it now. They had like 15 draws, Manchester United back then.
Yeah. So we'll see going forward. I think they'll probably keep the core of the team. I'm interested to see I think it seems like Magic and a few of the guys are going to be leaving. So we'll see how B-God rebuilds that team going into next season.
B-God, he was the manager of Germany during the World Cup, and he had a pretty good team. So I feel like he's capable of being a very good manager.
Yeah, I think
he's a positive presence.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to be around him.
Yep. Definitely.
They'll be good. We'll see how they do, because there's going to be some rebuilding. In third is going to be my team, along with Last Kings, Manchester City. Didn't quite get the results we needed down the stretch to get the points needed to beat River Plate. Finishing third, 91 goals for, 41 against. The 41 was the highest in the top four. Second best offense in the league, but there's a few games where we gave up goals that we shouldn't have. And we lost, I think down the stretch we lost to Young Boys, Manchester City, and we drew Roma. I think one other team you just wouldn't expect a team at the top of the league to do.
Did you just say you lost to yourselves? I did hear a Manchester City in there.
Yeah. Steve, how would you classify kind of the way those games went?
I mean, it was definitely one of the ourselves. I mean, the entire season, I can't remember a time when we ever went out and anybody just straight out played us from a perspective of we lived up to our potential and somebody was just better. It was just constantly a battle of consistency. And we directly lost because we struggled to find the same on-field chemistry game in, game out, and we just didn't have it. Plain and simple, there's just no other way to put it. We beat ourselves.
Yep. And I think the other way you can see that lack of consistency is in our Royal Cup run. The group stage was really up and down for us. It was a tight group, but it was a group that we probably should have done better in, and it took us till the last game against Bayer Leverkusen. We had to win 1-0, hold on, to get out of the groups. Lost 2-0 to Atlanta in the first round in the quarterfinals, and then beat them 4-1. Lost 3-0 to United in the first round of the semifinals, and then won 4-0. So we made it real challenging. In the end, we were able to beat River Plate last night 4-1, and I think that made us feel a lot better than if we'd gone home trophyless this season. I know we're really happy with that, and we definitely, I think we're going to try to keep a lot of the same team from next year, get a little bit more consistency in those lineups, and come back strong, win season 10.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely the plan. That previously, this is my third full season of PCN. And I've always completely changed up my teams, and this is the first time I'm actually going to be keeping pretty much the entire team together going into another season of PCN because I'm so confident that in our ability and what we're going to be able to do next season.
Well, in fourth place, Bayer Leverkusen had a really solid season. They kind of slowly worked their way up the table throughout the season. I think they were in 6th, 7th a lot of the year. Good, but then they kind of, as things went on, They kept a lot of the group that they had from when Rio was managing last year in League One and got them the title and ended up with the highest ever finish for a League One team. So I think if they get a few more goals in them, because they did have only 64 goals, the lowest I think in the top 7. I think if they can find that somewhere, the defense is really solid. They have a really good keeper. They have really good chemistry, and they're a tough team to play when you play them. I think that's a team that, depending on what they do, could definitely be in the title mix next season.
Before I make a comment, let me preface this because I got a lot of people mad at me last time on the podcast. Everything I say, or everything I'm about to say about Bayer Leverkusen, is just my opinion. It's nothing serious. So please, nobody get offended by what I'm about to say. Moving on. Leverkusen had, for a League One team that just won the league and promoted, great season. They kept almost everybody from when we won the league, and basically the same lineup. They changed the formation a couple times throughout the season from what I was told, and their biggest inconsistency was being able to score goals. They was the worst in the top 8 scoring goals. They had a great defense, like you said, goalkeeper, phenomenal. So their biggest, if they can get somebody over the edge to score more goals for them, they'll be right there back in the top 4, maybe fight for a title next season.
And behind them was Atlanta United, finishing 5th, 75 points. Really good offense, 83 goals. That's the third best mark in the league. 44 conceded is not bad, but that was the worst of the top 7. So I think you see, I think a lot of their attackers were in the team of the week all season long. But I think outside of Snowboarder, they didn't really have anyone pushing too high up the charts defensively, and so I think that's a team if they can kind of solidify the back end of the team. The attack is really showed its quality this season. Roberto winning Golden Boot. I think they may be surprised at a few people finishing as high as they did. I think people expected them to be at least an upper half. So in the end, didn't come close to any cups or anything, but 5th place in as competitive of a top kind of 7 as it was this year. I think that's a really good achievement for them.
Yeah, it was just, for me personally, like playing them and seeing their results throughout the season, it was just basically a lack of consistency, I would say.
Yep.
Because it was, like you said, it was like outside of Snowboarder, their defense was people changing in and out. I know they swapped goalkeepers, like I think halfway through the season. So it was a lot of changes here and there. They had a manager change from, I think it was Boss to Makino. So it was an in-house change, but still. So it was just more consistent next season, and they'll be right back where they was.
Yep. Behind them in 6th was Inter Milan, one of the other promoted teams who got through in the playoffs last season. And they were a team that definitely finished really strong in the second half. I think they figured some things out. Adding Smoke Break really helped their attack in that second half of the season after he joined from Napoli. And, they changed their style a little bit. I know in League One they were a very possession-heavy team, and they tried to do that some this season from what I could tell, but it wasn't, as extreme. They were willing to change their style to kind of adapt to the league. And very good defense, but very similar goals for and against as Bayer Leverkusen. Just need a little more consistency in the attack. And interested to see how breakout player Jamie, I think is probably going to end up leading the league in team of season points this year. Can he back that up next season and push Inter on even further? And if they keep that core as well, what can they do to supplement it and potentially push up even higher?
Well, now that I can say this because the beef that me and Kufavelli had from last season is officially dead now. It's like, besides the whole me taking Dan and Spurs thing from last season, which we're not going to talk about no more, they kept the same group of guys they had, the team that got promoted from the playoff finals. And when the whole Benfica situation happened, they took the defense from Benfica, added Perp and Patty, which helped their defense out amazingly. They added Smoke Break to have a goal scorer. Because Inter's biggest downfall at the end is they're a very passive team. That they almost emulate River Plate in a nutshell when it comes to offense. They like to pass around a lot, but nobody's there to have a shoot-first mentality, which Smoke Break added to the team. So, assuming they keep everybody, I know some big names like Jamie has already re-signed, their defense re-signed. So, a few pieces, and they're top 4 easily next season.
Now, I think probably the most interesting team this season in the end is right here in 7th place is Juventus. I think when we had the season preview podcast, I think almost everyone was leaning towards Juventus for the title. They hadn't changed too much of their team. They added some really high-level names, at least on paper. But I think in the end, the two things I was concerned about were kind of what played out that held them back was the change in management. Not to hate on Dad Job or anything, but just I don't think the team was quite the same with him in charge as it was with Italiano. And some of those big names they brought in that people expected to, become core players and outplay the players that, like Mokro and Italiano. That didn't happen. And in the end, Juve played a little bit better towards the end once they had a lot of those same players come back into the lineup. But they also had players like Realms and Kessie who just weren't available. And, those are two of the best, I don't know what number, but those are two of the better players in the league over the past few seasons. And so it'll be interesting to see how Italiano does kind of rebuilding them next season. And if they go from perhaps the most disappointing team in the league to back up there and in the title race, I wouldn't count them out for sure. It'll just be really interesting to see kind of what they do.
Yeah, they started off strong winning the preseason cup, and they looked like a team to be reckoned with. But like you said, the big names they signed, just I don't know if it was the PCN style or if it was just the chemistry of the team, but they just couldn't all hang with each other, and they ended up just going back to the old Juve way, and that's what got them some wins towards the end of the season.
Yep.
I'm a little disappointed they didn't pick up any silverware this season. Them being a team that, even in their lesser successful seasons, they still dominated the cups and kind of ran the side business, made sure that they were still collecting silverware.
Yeah, absolutely. Even last season when they finished a little bit of a disappointing fourth, they won the Royal Cup and they won the Super Cup. They've won those two cups, I think, 2 or 3 times each. So, yeah, this is their first trophyless season since season 5. Or season 4. Season 4. So, yeah, I know there's going to be a bunch of hungry people on Juve who are ready to get them back where they think they belong.
So that was my question. Is Italiano officially back?
Yep.
I know he is officially back. I mean, I think that it does some big things for the league just because I think it was a real shame that they weren't there at the top of the league this season. For a team that's been so consistent and done so well for so long. I think it does a lot of benefit for the good of the league, and I'm really looking forward to them coming back strong next season, giving us some good competition at the top.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time here on Juve, but I don't think this is the end of their era per se, because it's the first season, season 9, since they haven't won a trophy since season 5. It's pretty impressive, man, and I don't think this is the end of them at all, but it is kind of sad to see a team drop off like this, but I know that they'll be back next season, with Italiano coming back especially. I know Dad Job had a really tough job managing that team, but I'm looking forward to seeing their return next year and see what kind of motivation they have.
It's already been pretty much confirmed across that Italiano is working his way into taking some of the guys that are leaving River Plate for this season. So he's looking to build that team to bring back the trophies to Juve.
I expect they will be good. I expect they will be motivated. Couple seasons without a title, season without a cup. I'd look out for Juve. I expect them to be definitely higher than 7th next season. Moving down, let's try to wrap up the Super League before too long. Couple teams of note in mid-table. Lyon had a really solid second half of the season, ended up finishing 8th after they were kind of in the 12th-ish range for a lot of the year. Leak is looking to change out the team for next season. I know he's probably only going to keep a couple players, so that'll be interesting to see. But it was a good second half for them. They do qualify for next season's World Cup. And then Arsenal in 9th with 58 points. We're a team that were in kind of the top 6 or 7 for the first half of the season, and then I'm not sure exactly what happened over there, but they kind of fell off a bit. Still not a bad season for them. It's a lot of guys in their first Super League season. But I'd imagine there's some people and there's some changes that are going to be looked to be made at Arsenal to kind of prevent what happened in the second half from happening again. Rest of the table is kind of the mid-table area. As Schalke was finishing 10th with 51, Roma in 11th with 48. New York City finished decently strong, got up to 12th with 47 points after being in relegation zone kind of early on. PSG, 43 points. It
was a rough season for them.
Yeah, it's about where they finished last season. Just stay high. Just needs a few more guys to stick around for them to really get back up to where they were a couple seasons ago. Lazio with online ace ended up avoiding relegation again. It finished in 14th with 37 points. They actually finished pretty strong as well. They're keeping some clean sheets towards the end of the season. Benfica started off pretty well and then just had a big bust up with Bidon and some of his players, and then the rest of the season was pretty much a downward spiral. They avoided relegation, but who knows where that team is next season.
At what cost, yeah.
Yeah. Bayern Munich survived relegation again this season. Alex didn't manage the whole season, but he managed, I think, the first third or so, and then they got some new people in. Just a team that just needs probably a bit of an overhaul for them to really have any chance of pushing up from here. And then last team to stay above the relegation was Young Boys. 2 wins on the final day of the season to avoid relegation. My boys Frosty and Wayne doing their part to help Bauer and the boys stay in the Super League, which unfortunately meant that Liverpool, the So everyone's upset, or I don't know, people didn't like it, but Liverpool's going down, 31 points, getting relegated on the final day. Chelsea with panic attack in that group that we kind of said at the beginning of the season we weren't sure how they would cope. They finished in 19th with 24 points. And worst, or first to worst, Orlando Pirates without J-Way, 18 points, 3 wins, negative 42 goal difference. They were a bit of a mess all season, so that was your Super League in Season 9. Any final thoughts on any team we didn't touch on, or just a general kind of feeling?
Just a little surprised to see, the likes of, in the terms of club status teams, we got, Liverpool, Chelsea, now in D1 as well. We've got the likes of Barcelona and Real Madrid, big name teams now in D1, whereas we got the likes of, New York City up into the Super League. It's interesting to see these kind of like fluctuations in teams.
I got 2 out of 3 of my relegation predictions right. I had the Pirates and Liverpool going down, but I thought Chelsea was going to they had a tough stretch at the beginning of the season. I thought they were just going, when they got to the mid-table teams, they was going to pick up some wins and then finish mid-table, but they just never got out of that slump they started in.
Well, Brazilian, you want to lead our League One discussion?
Yeah, I suppose I can. Well, we wrapped up last week for the leagues in Tottenham. Finished first with 73 points. Bear with me here. Tied with Minnesota on 73 points with a +1 goal difference. We scored 16 goals on the final day, Will. Was that the correct number?
Yeah, 16 goals for, 1 goal against.
I think Minnesota was like 14-1 or something.
We just had like the mentality at first of like, oh, we're not going to win it. But then we just started scoring goals and we're like, fuck it, let's see where this goes. And we just kind of kept going. We also ended up beating River Plate in the cup final of the League Cup. And, it was a really back and forth game. Both teams created a lot of not really that many chances, but it was a very defensive and counter-heavy game that just, ended up being decided in penalties. So,
and if you want to go watch Brazilian's performance in that, it's on Will's Twitch.
I'm just doing my job.
Pretty epic penalty saves there at the end. Yeah, that was a really fun game to watch, and really impressed. The first League One team to win a cup outside of winning their own league. So I think in the end, the two teams people thought were going to get those automatic spots were Spurs and Minnesota, and that's how it worked out. But it was a fun title race, I think. I wasn't involved in it, obviously, playing-wise, but I'm sure for you guys, that was, it was up and down. Both teams were leading at times. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think we were on the back foot for a majority of it, but Minnesota, they were supposed to be in League Two, but they ultimately proved that would have been an absolute mistake. And rightfully so. They provided a much better showing in League One as far as the season's results. They only lost the title due to a default loss versus Santos and, tying us the 2 times we played them. They were a great team. I don't think there's enough that can be said about them as far as, their quality. Obviously, each of us wanted to say that we were the better team, but they were really good. They were hard to play against. Moving on from there, Atletico Madrid in third with 63 points. They had a +33 goal difference. They lost the first 3, but then they actually had an outstanding second, turnaround from that point and finished 20, 3 and 4. And, our main man here, Vanquish, played a big part in you guys winning the playoffs 1-0 over Milan in the semis. You want to tell us a little bit about it, Vanquish?
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, it was a tough game. I mean, I was actually not even going to play that game due to some complications, but Vital asked me to come in. Most of our guys are new to 11, so they're super nervous throughout the whole time. Yeah, I've been experienced in leagues, so for me, I just relax. And yeah, and then Vital just lets me pretty much be free, do what I want. So I tend to skill a lot. I gotta say, Vital's one of the smartest managers because he had pictures of their lineup way before. So he told me that my side, the right side, is going to be the weakest side. So he told me to just keep pressuring. And yeah, eventually I was all over that side. And then when it came down to the set piece, yeah, so I decided to like let's just play it short instead of shooting it, and in the end it worked out.
Yeah, commentating your game over me and Will did. Your name was constantly a talking point throughout that game, and I actually wasn't really too familiar with you up until that point. But you had made the team of the week. You came in with you were one of the players to watch coming into the game, and you played a major part, and that was a really fun game to watch for any of the people that decided to tune in for that fixture.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
I like to add that I didn't even get man of the match, even though you guys voted for me. He stripped it away from me.
Yike. All right. Well, fourth place was AC Milan. They had a really good season. They had 57 points and a plus 26 goal difference, but they were a bit overhyped in the preseason as one of the teams that everyone expected to make it back in. They unfortunately have, after being bested by Atletico, have to go again next season. They fell off in the middle of the title race, ultimately lacked the goals they needed to get the promotion. But they were the early favorites for promotion, or they will be they will be the early favorites for promotion next season.
And Ricky will for sure ban everyone if they don't get promoted next time.
Well, that's always the case. How it always is every season. It's like the three teams that go down, you always expect one of them to just come right back up. But especially with a club like AC Milan, they started off with a lot of big names. Cough, cough, Cozy. How you doing? He's on mute. Lovely. That was a fail. Yeah, they had a lot of big names that ended up not staying or didn't fit how they was trying to play. So it'd be interesting to see what Quad comes up with for next season.
Yeah, Quad was a good manager. I had a lot. Although my review at the beginning of the season for the team of the week selection wasn't so much in their favor per se. After a complication mix-up, I came to respect that team a lot and what they had going with their program, commentating their games, and kind of getting to know some of the Milan players. They were a really good team, and I look forward to seeing what they got next season. But
from what I do know sorry to cut you off, Brazilian, but from what I do know from talking to Quad, the team that he had this year will not be like a returning force. He said he's keeping a couple of names, but the rest he's trying to bring in new faces that can build a new chemistry together. So it'd be interesting to see what names he's looking at.
I've already heard of several people who have been messaged by him. Won't name any names, but yeah, I know he's going to do his damnedest to get them back to Super League next year after coming so close.
Well, 5th and 6th, this was kind of the splitting point of the league. They were 7 points off of 4th, so this is kind of where it falls away. But Barcelona and Real Madrid, 5th and 6th, 50 and 49 points respectively. I had said earlier in the season, during the podcast, I believe the season started, that Barcelona would be a team to look out for. And while they didn't start the season as hot as they wanted to be, they finished in a pretty respectable 5th place. I think they, lived up to their names. They were both well-rounded teams that should easily compete for playoffs again. They just need to add another couple top-end players to really secure the bag for their upcoming season. They had a lot of balance and some decent depth, but they just didn't have any standout star names.
Barcelona, I think, besides like trying to get more solid defensively and maybe add another goal scorer to them, their biggest key, I would say, for next season is trying to lock in Vidal or Gaza, whatever his game attack is nowadays, that he re-signs. He was a solid person for them. He played DM for most of the season. Then he ended up playing, I think, Cam or Striker.
I played him striker.
So, yeah, so he was a very big part of them finishing as high as they did. So I would hope that they will be able to keep him for their sake.
On from that, we have Dortmund in 7th on 48. They were one of the hottest teams in the league at the end. They folded and came under new management early in the season, and they got the EGN team. Pulisic, my finger, is that correct? Is that who took over?
Pretty much.
Yes.
Purpose team.
Yeah, and they're a very experienced group. They should be title favorites heading into this season. They only had 2 losses in the final 20 games. They just, picked up a sinking ship and just had to mend it going forward. But now they've got, the man of war ready to take on them. They're going to be an exciting team.
Yeah, I was just going to say definitely them, and everybody would seem to think Milan, given Quad's rebuilding ability, will be the title favorites for next season.
And there's obviously probably going to be some teams that get taken over that, we'll be saying in a couple weeks, oh, that's going to be a team that's probably going to be promoted. Because like Minnesota, you got, I think, put in League One about a week before the season started, and as soon as that happened, that became another team. I was like, well, they're going to be in the mix. So there'll probably be a few new ones, but I think right now, I think it's fair to call that those two should be at least the betting favorite early on.
Mm-hmm. Galatasaray in 8th on 45. They had a pretty average season, as well as Napoli in 9th on 40. AS Monaco finished 10th with 37. Club America 11th with 32. Icon PCN Santos finished 12th with 31. RB Leipzig knocked out a 13th place with 28 points. And relegated teams, PSV in 14th with 27, Ajax in 15th with 22, and Porto in 6th with 9. Yikes.
We learned on the last podcast. We learned on the last podcast that that's not the lowest in history of PCN, but for a full season, it is pretty low.
It's bad.
In
They had
101
goals against. Oh my god.
My goodness.
What is it in League One? 30 games? So in 30 games, they got 9 points.
They may have switched managers, I think, like once, or even maybe within the team at some point during the season, but they played till the end, and you got to give a team credit like that knows it's relegated for weeks, and
Their respect.
even if they're not showing up with a full 11, and even if they're not maybe playing their guts out, they're still showing up. They're making it so it's not defaults. I just always give credit to a team who can do that.
Absolutely.
To pause for a second, hi Cozy. Cozy was on a server mute, so he couldn't unmute himself.
They're trying to silence me, man. It's crazy.
Somebody muted Cozy from the server. So hi Cozy.
Treating me like I'm ISO or some shit. I feel like I'm ISO.
You wanna talk some Spurs real quick?
Yeah, I want to talk some Spurs. The greatest team to ever grace League One.
So, Cozy, as a former Milan player, what do you think Quad's going to do for next season?
I don't know, man. Can y'all hear me? I don't see my thing lighting up.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
All right, gang. So, yeah, first I do want to touch on that Milan stuff. I won't say they were overhyped to come into the season because they did have all those quote-unquote big names to come in, but a strand of unluckiness and those quote-unquote big names left. So he was left with not a super team, but he still had a quality team around them. And, I talk to Quad all the time, and he told me, that team really, they didn't have the core spirit to keep going. They could have easily kept up and been in the third place. They beat Minnesota and Spurs on the second game day. They were 4-0. They kept going. But through mid-season, those guys fell apart core-wise. I don't know what happened. Some guys showed up, and then some guys just stopped playing altogether. And you also saw that in the final away from Atletico playing But for next season, I just hope Quad can bring in some guys that are willing to play for him, are willing to stay around, and through adversity, and still show up every game day and play for the badge, It's sad to see Milan down there.
So, Cozy, as a guy that started the season off on Milan, when you eventually found or decided that the system wasn't right for you and left, what made the decision to choose Tottenham? Because I know Minnesota was an option for you. So why Tottenham out of everybody?
Vape's recruiting is so good. I can't explain it, bro. Can't explain it.
You're a secret Spurs fan, aren't you?
Yeah, low key. I had to stay.
I agree with Cozy. I don't think there's only two people that I would ever play for, even if they were on Spurs. It's basically Vape. I don't know how Vape managed to convince us, but we had more Arsenal fans on that team than we had Spurs fans, if that's a testament to anything.
It's absurd. You guys are all clearly closet Spurs fans.
Wait, is this Vape's team or my team? I can't tell.
Chill, bro. Will didn't even talk. Will didn't even talk to me, bro. Will was like, "Oh, cool, Cozy's coming over," and then I just came over.
Man, I just let Vape do his thing with transfers, man. Not even gonna lie.
That was my role at Milan. I don't think I recruited a single player, but I was there to. I was the co-manager, but I was kind of the manager. But all the managers were the ones who recruited.
I mean, let's be honest. It had to be run through Will, so if that says anything.
That's true.
I mean, I've got experience with you in other leagues and stuff like that, and I knew you were a solid player, and I knew you fit our team really well. So
That's why I came over.
While you were in Italy.
It was probably
Yeah.
the best fit. I miss those Italy days, though. We're coming back. Don't worry.
don't worry,
Don't even worry about it.
I'm gonna sit the bench next season.
No, it's coming home.
All right.
Speaking of bench, you want to talk about our League One team of the season real quick?
Yeah, I want to say I wish you don't was on the bench, not for the team of the season, just on the bench.
What?
But
Um,
that man is a starting striker. But to touch on some of the more impressive players in the team of the season, let's start in goal with our boy Jeepers. And, you know, I've been saying his name enough on this podcast and the write-ups, and he's just always been, you know, I think AJ was the one that brought it to our attention last season that he was just someone to keep your eyes on. He was just consistent, and he showed it this season with a great string of performances. Him and A. Vols, who is a center back that joins in this team of the season, two Napoli representatives that really were just a reason that they did as well as they did, even though they didn't do that well. Z King from Minnesota. I mean, what can you say about Z King? Z King is one of the most versatile, like, all-the-place players. He's a very solid CB for them. He racked up, you know, countless stat after stat, made a team of the week or two. Consistent player. Z King. Sorry, just said Z King. Beast Gaming from AC Milan accompanies that other center back spot. What is there to say about Beast Gaming other than he's Beast Gaming? Dad Stanky Ham from Spurs. Right back turned right mid. Clearly worked out for him.
big shout out, Ham.
Big
I love
shout
you,
out.
dog. I did not know you had that kind of offensive game in you. Thank you for proving me wrong, and no one is ever allowed to hate on you again.
Our two CDM spots are accompanied by Gaza from Barcelona and Bozy from Spurs. Bozy put in a couple shifts in different positions this season, so it was good to see him still dominating that DM role. Outside mid today, Dino from Minnesota. Our Cam, Buzzkill from Spurs. Two of our strikers were Chubbs and Vape on Minnesota and Tottenham respectively, but they've played alongside each other before. Our bench consists of Pure Vegetable from AC Milan, who had a fantastic game in the Cup final, I'd like to add. Although I didn't get to catch all of his performances throughout the season, he had a good showing in the Cup final. Will, you made the bench. Congratulations.
That's where you wanted to be, right?
Just keeping the streak alive and a little bit of foreshadowing for next season. No big deal.
Just be grateful that Dorsey is also a Tottenham fan, because Sol Camp was in your future if it wasn't for that.
That is unacceptable, and I will file a formal complaint to Ricky.
Who's an Arsenal fan, so that complaint would go nowhere. Just
Does Ricky
saying.
even exist?
Go to Gizmos.
Yeah, if you are friends with him on WhatsApp, he has Gizmo's updates every day on his status.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh
His
my
his
god!
Instagram.
whenever I
Instagram
talk to
stories
him,
are
I just hear
constant
music
Gizmos.
in the background.
Yeah. Man committed to his craft.
Yeah.
All right, continuing on. I got my longtime friend Minnesota Maniac here from Atletico at CB. He put in also a huge shift in the final of the Cup game. Jakub from Minnesota takes up the bench right mid spot, and goal machine Cam Sanders from Minnesota. We got King Smurf and Eddie Disaster as our two final bench striker compliments. From there, what do you think? Any thoughts from the League One team of the season anyone has?
Shout out Jakub, GBC, Young Boys, Milan. Also, shout out Beast Gaming. He's a clamp god.
Yeah. In the end, just a lot of Spurs and a lot of Minnesota. They were the two teams. I think they had like plus 65 goal difference roughly. The next best team was like plus 25 or 30. So just a lot of opportunities for those players to rack up some good stats. Gave them the team season. But then you see, I think it was a representative from third, from fourth, from fifth, from sixth. And then Napoli, of course, got a couple down there. So you know, a lot. It was heavy on the top two, but you saw people from everyone else kind of getting in there, and there's years where it'll be a little bit more of a balanced team this season. I think that'll be that way in Super League this season. But you just see the quality of those top two teams really shining here.
Absolutely. And from that, I think we go on to League Two.
Yeah, League Two. Don't have anyone from League Two here tonight, unfortunately. We know you guys were bitching in the Discord about trying to get more involved. Well, we asked you and you couldn't get on, so we'll just talk about what we know. So, Olympiacos, like we mentioned before, ran the league. First place, 77 points, plus 57 goal difference, 25 wins, 2 draws, 6 members of the team this season. Really good team. Some people with some PCN experience, just a lot of people with experience overall. And they really, really proved it throughout the season. I think they'll be at least a playoff team next season in League One. Very excited to see how they do. They can be the first team to go from League 2 to Super League. Lille finished a very comfortable second. I think they were a lot of people's preseason favorites because they had a lot of people who had played PCN before. Definitely comfortably made it, 63 points, 18 ahead of third. But they did kind of just settle into second best this season. I don't think they beat Olympiacos in any of their tries when they had the head-to-head. So, interesting to see how they'll do in League One next year. I think they'll at least be kind of a mid-table as long as they can keep that same group together. We'll have to see. And then kind of the last 3 teams to kind of note on will be 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Fenerbahce finished a solid 3rd. Seemed to have a very strong defense, at least for League 2, but just kind of lacked the goals they needed. Only had 38 all season in the league, and then lost to Genk in the playoffs. So Genk, who finished 4th, for the people who weren't involved in League 2 this year, I'm sure all the admins can tell you that Genk was a bit of a hard team at times. Lots of controversy down there. Things happening to Genk, things happening within Genk, things Genk apparently was doing to other teams. But
they got ganked.
They got ganked, but in the end they got promoted, and to me will be a fascinating team to watch as they adjust to a higher league and a higher standard. I think a lot of teams they played with about 6, 7, 8 people. So
the 2 points I have for Genk was me and Lego was supposed to commentate the Fenerbahce Genk finals, but Lego's computer wanted to crash on them, so I ended up just watching the game, and it went to penalties just like the League Cup finals. So it was more offense than the River Plate Spurs game, but I mean it's 8 people on each team. But I can speak for as an editor that makes Team of the Week cards. I'm happy they got promoted because hopefully, no offense, Genk, you don't get any more Team of the Week, so I don't have to struggle finding players to put on your cards.
I've never heard of that team in my life.
They're from Belgium, right? Something like that.
Yeah, but they don't even have like headshots. I have to go on Football Manager to get their headshots.
Well, I think the last team that you will see in Team of the Week next year is going to be New York Red Bulls, assuming they keep the team they have that they kind of got towards the end of the season. They only had 1 loss in their final 11 games after they had a new manager come in. Ended up finishing 5th after being, I think, last early on. And to me, I think they look like the early League 2 title favorites for Season 10. A lot of those teams are going to be sticking around for their second season, and it was really fascinating to see the growth of teams and of players as they, a lot of these guys, I think other than the top 2 teams, pretty much all the other teams filled with players who had never played in a league environment, and they had a good time, and just excited to see how they do, with a little bit of experience under the belt.
Red Bulls have been for like the past 2 to 3 weeks very active in the Discord, like trying to get friendlies already, and they're ready for next season already. So I would put them up there for title favorites, and Fenerbahce if they stay as a team.
The last thing we'll do for League 2 is go ahead and announce their team in the season as well. So in goal, we had Prez Moose from Fenerbahce. There weren't a lot of pretty much the goalies only played about 15 to 17 games, the ones who were up there for team of the season. So it wasn't a ton of options necessarily, but there were a few contenders, and Prez Moose is the best of the lot. Defense, James T. from Olympiacos, Immortal Panda from Fenerbahce, and One Shot 26 from Lille. There was definitely, I think, the best teams in the league ended up playing 3-back, which was interesting to see even down in League 2. And those are three really good center backs. Freddie Boss and Velas Rex were the wings, both from Olympiacos. Gato Bravo 9, former Juventus champion, down in League 2 doing his thing at CDM, getting team season for Lille, along with Brando Nico, who ended up the season playing for PSG in Super League, but he did enough when he was down there to get himself the team of the season as well. And then in the attacking band, we had Wish You Luck, the manager of Olympiacos. See how he does next year in League 1. And then our strikers were Serginho 9 from Lille, very experienced PCM player, and then Shuda from Olympiacos ended up with the golden boot and our last spot in the team of the season. So congrats again to everyone in League 2 who got promoted, and just, we'll talk about you more a little bit next season as you guys start to make some more headlines and show your quality. Just keep doing your
And decide to show up on the podcast.
Exactly.
I love D2 though. It's so fire.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know.
I think the first couple weeks there was a couple teams that folded, and after that, I don't think a single team folded in like the last month of the season, something like that. So, shout out to you guys.